the mid-level specification writer. They pull in a projected salary of $101,000, and the source calls them the studio's contract language architect.
Which is such a precise and necessary term, really. I mean, think about it this way. Architectural drawings show a contractor where something goes and what it looks like.
Like, put a wall here, put a window there.
Right, but the specifications, the specs, are the written manuals that define exactly what that material must be, how it has to be verified, and, what counts as acceptable workmanship.
I like to think of the spec writer as the prenuptial agreement lawyer for a building.
That is a great analogy.
Right, because they're making sure that before the marriage of the design team and the construction team happens, all those lofty green aspirations are locked in as an ironclad legal delivery requirement.
Because if they aren't, the project falls into what the source calls substitution chaos.
And nobody wants substitution chaos.
No, they don't. What's fascinating here is how easily a green building can be ungreen during construction.
Right, like that skyscraper example from earlier.
Exactly. A contractor's on site, they're facing a tight deadline, and they say, hey, I can get this other sealant cheaper, and it looks exactly the same.
But it's not the same.
No. If that cheaper sealant off-gases toxic chemicals, your indoor air quality is ruined. So the spec writer builds this legal fortress around low-emitting materials, recycled content thresholds, air tightness testing.
So the green goals don't just get engineered out later to save a few pennies?
Precisely.
Which leads us directly into role number 55. The mid-level code consultant, earning $102,000.
Right.
So if the spec writer is the lawyer, the code consultant is the translator between government regulation and architectural design. They are embedding compliance early.
Dealing with things that sound incredibly dry but are actually high stakes.
Like egress strategy, occupancy classification, fire ratings. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, early is the operative word here. They aren't just, checking boxes at the end of a project before submitting it to the city.
Right, they're in it from the start.
Yeah, imagine an architect designs this gorgeous open concept multi-story atrium right in the center of an eco office. It looks amazing.
Lots of natural light, very trendy.
Totally. But the code consultant looks at that conceptual design and says, well, if a fire starts on the ground floor, this atrium acts like a giant chimney. It pulls smoke straight up to the top floor. You just violated fire code.
Oh, wow. So if they catch that at the end of the project?
It's a disaster. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars in redesign. I mean, the entire mechanical ventilation system would have to be scrapped.
That is wild.
So the code consultant interprets the law and diagrams solutions that meet the safety codes while preserving as much of that aesthetic vision as possible.
It's all about avoiding the expensive backtrack.
Absolutely.
And rounding out this foundational tier of our list is role number 54. The project architect for small projects, coming in at $103,000.
This is a big stepping stone.
Yeah, this is often the first time someone truly owns a project from start to finish. And the source makes a really interesting point here. It says small environmental projects are deceptively intense.
Oh, they definitely are.
Because you'd think a small building is easier, but it's often much harder because the budgets are microscopic.
Exactly right. When you have a massive $50 million budget, you can afford to just throw money at sustainability.
Right, by the expense of solar array.
By the top-tier geothermal pump, yeah. But when the budget is microscopic, this project architect has to protect the highest impact sustainability moves while navigating severe financial constraints.
So they have to play a really ruthless game of prioritization.
Very ruthless. What can be simplified? What absolutely cannot be compromised under any circumstances?
Okay, so we have our rules, our legal fortress, and our compliance locked in. But how does a modern architectural firm actually process all the complex environmental data needed to hit these goals?
Right, because data doesn't just manage itself.
No, it does not. That brings us to our next cohort on the list.
Yeah.
The digital engine room. We are moving up into the realm of the digital force multipliers.
This is really where architecture meets computer science.
Yes, exactly. Enter role number 53, the computational or parametric design technologist, earning $105,000.
A very technical role.
Very. These are the people building custom tools using programming languages like Python or complex visual scripting software like Rhino and Grasshopper.
Right. The source notes, they create automated daylight studies, iterative massing optimization,
and tools that extract carbon quantities directly from the digital models.
They sit perfectly at the intersection of design, data, and production. To give you a real-world scenario, imagine designing a glass skyscraper in Dubai.
Okay.
The summer heat is punishing, right? So instead of a human manually calculating the angle of the sun at every hour of the day for an entire year,
which would take forever.
Literally forever. Instead of doing that to figure out where to put window shades, the design technologist writes a script.
Oh, it's smart.
Yeah, that script generates 500 variations of a shading system, tests them all against historical solar data, and spits out the single most efficient option. An option that blocks the heat while still letting in natural light. It saves hundreds of hours of manual labor.
Okay, that sounds undeniably brilliant. But then we move to the next role on the list, role number 52, the practice level BIM manager at $107,000.
Ah, yes. BIM.
Now, I have to push back here a little bit. Wait, isn't BIM, which is building information modeling, isn't that just fancy 3D drafting?
A lot of people think that.
Because why is managing the firm's drafting software a $107,000 strategic role?
It's a very common misconception, but I have to correct you there. BIM is absolutely not just 3D drafting.
Really?
No, it is a highly complex relational database that just happens to look like a 3D model on a screen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, every single wall, window, and steel beam in that digital model contains embedded data. What it's made of, its exact thermal properties, its weight, its carbon footprint, who manufactured it.
That is a ton of information.
It's massive, and the BIM manager builds and maintains that massive digital infrastructure for the entire firm.
Ah. Okay, so if the data in that database is junk, the analysis is junk.
Precisely. BIM is the critical infrastructure for carbon reporting. If the BIM manager doesn't set up the material definitions and the parameter consistency correctly from day one,
The whole thing falls apart.
the entire sustainability strategy fails because you literally can't measure what you're designing.
So that carbon extractor tool the design technologist just built.
It won't work. Not if the BIM manager hasn't standardized how a concrete slab is labeled in the system. They ensure clean data exports so the energy modeling tools actually function.
That makes total sense now. You can't have a smart building with dumb data.
Exactly.
So with that flawless digital infrastructure in place, we now encounter the highly specialized experts who use those digital tools to measure and optimize specific environmental metrics.
Moving up the ladder.
Yep, moving up into the realm of the granular sustainability gurus. First up in this group is role number 51, the mid-level sustainability consultant at $108,000.
Their job is a psychological one as much as a technical one.
How do you mean?
Well, they have to make sustainability feel like a value engine to the client, rather than, just an annoying regulatory obligation.
Like reframing the conversation.
Right. They aren't just tracking green building credits on a spreadsheet. They are running project-scale strategy. They guide the design choices early and quantify the value of those choices in terms of cost, schedule risk, and long-term operational savings.
And working alongside them is role number 50, the senior architectural technologist at $110,000.
The technical authority.
Right. The source calls them exactly that, a technical authority. They're the ultimate guardians of the building's envelope integrity.
But let me ask you, isn't the envelope just, the wall?
You'd think so, but no.
Why do we need a specialized technical authority for a wall?
Because a wall is never just a wall. A modern building envelope is a highly complex membrane of insulation, vapor barriers, cladding, and structure.
Okay, so it's a lot of layers. Tons of layers. And the architectural technologist is looking at things like airtightness, continuity, and thermal bridging.
What's a thermal bridge?
A thermal bridge is where a highly conductive material, like a steel beam, passes directly from the cold outside to the warm inside. It literally acts as a bridge for heat to escape.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
Yeah, so you can design the most efficient heating system in the world, but if the architectural technologist doesn't perfectly detail how the window frame meets the wall or how the roof meets the parapet,
The heat just leaks out.
exactly.
Yeah.
The heat leaks out, water seeps in. They solve those incredibly complex junction conflicts.
So they ensure the building actually functions in physics, not just on paper.
That's a great way to put it.
Which brings us to the carbon side of things. Rule number 49 is the senior LCA, which stands for life cycle assessment, and carbon consultant at $112,000. They translate embodied carbon into design options. And just to be clear, for you listening, we aren't just talking about the energy used to run the building, like the lights and the AC.
No, operational carbon is different.
Embodied carbon is all the carbon emitted to mine the iron, forge the steel, mix the concrete, and transport it to the site before the building even opens.
And that is a massive slice of global emissions.
Huge.
So the carbon consultant is setting carbon budgets for the project and ensuring that those commitments actually survive the supply chain constraints.
Which is probably tough.
Very tough. Carbon decisions at this level are heavily intertwined with structural engineering, facade design, and cost. This person has to be politically savvy within the project team.
Like negotiating.
Yeah, they have to push the structural engineer to use lower carbon concrete mixes without blowing up the budget or the construction schedule.
It sounds like an intense balancing act.
It really is.
And speaking of balancing acts, we have role number 48, the senior daylighting and glare specialist, pulling in $113,000.
A very specific niche.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting to me. This person is shaping the glazing strategy, which is basically how much glass the building has.
Right.
But how do they balance the conflicting goals of sustainability and occupant well-being? Like, what happens if maximizing natural light for energy savings accidentally blinds everyone in the office with massive glare?
It is a constant paradox, and that is exactly why this requires a senior role.
Okay.
Let's look at a scenario. You have a south-facing office. The architect wants floor-to-ceiling glass for a stunning view.
Naturally.
And the energy modeler loves it because they can turn off the artificial lights and save power. But the glare specialist steps in and says, at 2 p.m. in July, the glare will be so bad, employees won't be able to see their laptop screens.
Which ruins productivity.
Right. And the heat gain will overload the air conditioning, wiping out our energy savings.
Oh, wow. So what do? Do they just say no to the big windows?
Sometimes yes, but usually
Okay.
they don't just say no. They create what the source calls decision packages for the architects.
Like presenting options.
Exactly. They present the trade-offs. They might suggest interior layout changes, like moving the desks back from the perimeter, or they might suggest different glazing ratios or a custom exterior shading device.
Oh, I see.
They are mapping the geometry of the sun to find the narrow sweet spot between energy performance and human visual comfort.
Okay, I'm stuck on something here, though.
What's that?
We have all these granular gurus. We have specialists tracking glare, carbon, air tightness, and heat down to the millimeter. But it sounds like a classic too many cooks in the kitchen scenario,
It definitely can be.
right? Because if the carbon expert wants less glass to save embodied carbon, but the daylighting expert wants more glass for natural light, who actually makes the call? All these details can compound into massive project-killing risks if they aren't managed holistically.
That is exactly why we are climbing higher on the list. When you get too granular, you lose the whole building.
So we transition to the macro risk guardians, starting with role number 47, the senior building envelope consultant at $115,000. This is high-stakes technical leadership.
Very high stakes.
We just talked about the technologist detailing the junctions, but this consultant is advising on the entire facade system's macro performance.
Right, because if the air tightness or moisture control fails at a macro level, it's not just an energy problem. The source is very clear on this. If moisture control fails, the health and durability of the entire building collapse.
Geez.
Yeah. Think about severe mold infestations, structural rot, and sick building syndrome. They write the technical memos that prioritize these massive existential risks for the firm.
And right next to them is role number 46, the senior energy and decarbonization consultant at $116,000.
The systems and strategy role.
Right. They are advising on the heavy machinery like heat pumps, thermal storage, grid emissions factors, and electrification pathways.
And they have to balance the upfront first costs of these incredibly advanced systems with the long-term operational costs and carbon targets over 30 or 50 years.
That's a huge timeline. And then to answer my question about who resolves the too many cooks dilemma, we hit role number 45.
Ah, yes. Role number 45, the senior project architect earning $118,000.
They lead delivery at scale.
Right. They are the ultimate guardian, ensuring that the sustainability targets survive all the inevitable painful compromises that happen between the initial concept and actual construction.
So they're the ones resolving the fight between the daylighting expert and the carbon expert.
Exactly. They make the final call.
You know, for you listening, when you really look at these three roles, these people are basically highly paid human insurance policies.
That's a very accurate way to put it.
Their entire job is to foresee disaster, whether it's catastrophic water ingress, a failing energy grid, or a compromised design, before a single shovel hits the dirt.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally value architecture.
How so?
Well, when you reach this level of the career ladder, your value to the firm isn't necessarily in what beautiful forms you create. Your value is entirely in the catastrophic failures you prevent.
Oh, wow.
You are paid for what doesn't happen.
That is a heavy but incredibly true way to look at it. But let's say they succeed. They've resolved the clashes. They've designed the perfect risk-free system in the studio.
In theory, yes.
Right, in theory. But what happens when that pristine digital design meets the muddy, chaotic, unpredictable reality of a construction site? Or when you try to scale that perfection across an entire global firm?
That is the big question.
That takes us to the top of our list, our final cohort, the battlefield and the big picture.
This is where theory collides with reality.
Perfect. Because role number 44 takes us right into the mud. The lead construction administrator at $120,000. The source literally calls them the studio's defender on the construction battlefield.
They are the boots on the ground. They are managing RFIs, which stands for Requests for Information.
Basically, contractors asking questions.
Yeah, it's what happens when a contractor looks at the blueprints, gets confused, and essentially sends a formal question asking, what does this mean? Or, this beam doesn't fit, what do I do?
Right.
They are also reviewing submittals and product substitutions.
Oh, remember the spec writer from the very bottom of our list? Role 56, the prenup lawyer.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up. Because if the spec writer is the prenup lawyer who wrote the rules, the construction administrator is the private investigator out in the mud with a magnifying glass.
Making sure they actually follow the rules.
Yes, they are the enforcer who makes sure the contractor actually uses the correct, compliant materials that the spec writer demanded months or years ago.
So what does this all mean? It means the construction administrator is part detective, trying to figure out what the contractor is actually doing behind the drywall.
Part diplomat, keeping the design team and the builders from yelling at each other.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of that. And part risk manager, protecting the project's performance commitments when things inevitably go wrong on site.
Because they always go wrong on site. And while they are fighting on the physical site, role number 43 is fighting in the legal and regulatory realm.
That's the senior code and accessibility consultant at $121,000.
Right. They navigate the absolute hardest, most complex parts of compliance. We aren't talking about a simple staircase anymore.
No, we're talking about tricky egress paths in massive 80,000-seat stadiums.
Or complex mixed occupancies. Imagine a building where a highly volatile chemistry lab sits directly on top of a luxury hotel.
That sounds like a nightmare to permit.
It is. How do you ventilate that? How do you evacuate that safely?
The source says their product is pure risk reduction. They are preventing massive litigation and project-killing delays. Which finally brings us to the top of our ladder. We made it. Rule number 42. The senior sustainability manager for a project portfolio, projecting a salary of $123,000.
Notice the key word there. Portfolio.
Portfolio, right.
They aren't just looking at one building anymore. They are overseeing sustainability performance across multiple projects, maybe dozens of them globally.
So they're looking at the firm as a whole.
Yes, they establish firm-wide standards, coordinate consistency, and report directly to executive leadership.
And their ultimate goal is to create repeatable workflows so that sustainability isn't dependent on one heroic person on one project.
Exactly. It just becomes the way the firm operates by default.
It's systemic.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, just look at the financial and philosophical progression we've tracked down this list.
It's a huge jump.
As the salary increased from the spec writer's $101,000 to the portfolio manager's $123,000, the scope of responsibility fundamentally shifted.
From individual parts to the whole system.
Right. It moved from executing individual granular technical tasks to managing portfolio-wide governance, legal protection, and systemic risk.